Hi, PJ Scott here with Veterans Forum. I'm coming to you today from the Bremerton National Airport, and I'm pleased to be here today as we have wonderful, historic, restored World War II airplanes. What a treat. And with me here today on Veterans Forum is Mike, who's going to talk to us about the Collins Foundation and how these wonderful old planes from World War II happened to get restored and arrived here today. Mike, tell us a little something about yourself. How did you get involved in flying these planes?
Well, I was just in the right place at the right time. I had bought a ride, that we give rides in the airplanes, and I had bought a ride in the B-17, and the next day they needed a co-pilot to help them take it to the next stop.
So you were literally in the right place at the right time. And this is live, folks. You can hear the airplane going over. This isn't a quiet studio. Mike, tell us, where do you hail from? Where do you live, Mike?
I live in Long Beach, California. I just happen to be on the West Coast flying the airplane now. So we do a clockwise tour of the entire United States. We started in mid-January in Florida, and we've just worked our way across the country. Now we're coming up north. And then tomorrow we'll go to Seattle, and then we start eastbound, and by mid-November we'll be back in Florida again.
How much time do you really spend at home, Mike?
Home? Actually, we have we rotate our pilots in and out. I normally fly the B-17. Occasionally I fly as co-pilot in the B-24. I usually stay out for 30 days or so. And then another pilot will take my place, and he'll be out. Most of the other guys are airline types that have jump seat privileges and stuff, can jump on an airliner and meet them anywhere. I don't have that ability, so I stay longer. They usually come out for just a matter of a few days, and we rotate. We have a total in our whole organization of 14 pilots, and so
now
that's pilots and co-pilots.
Now this is regular pilots that they can count on year-round? That's
correct. We go ground school in early January in Florida. It's mandatory, everybody take it. And the FAA sits in on our ground school to see that they're teaching us what they're supposed to. And we have to stay current in each of the airplanes, and we have a flight check that we do every year through the FAA also.
Now, tell us something about these wonderful planes. Now, tell us the plane that we're standing in front of us, that's behind us, where did it get rescued? And I have to believe it was a lot of effort, a lot of money to get this beautiful old lady back up in the air. Tell us something about this plane.
Well, it's all of the above. It's a World War II bomber. It's a B-24 made by Consolidated. It was built in August of 1944. It went to the Royal Air Force and served in the South Pacific. After the war, the RAF gave the airplane, along with several others, to the Indian Air Force, and it operated with them until into the late 1960s. And they flew them as patrol bombers. And then a private collector purchased what remained of it, took it to England, and then our owner purchased that and was talked into restoring it to an airworthy condition. The first thought was they weren't going to make it airworthy, just going to be a static display. And a lot of the B-24 veterans talked him into the time and the effort. It took several years, 97,000 volunteer man-hours, and $1.3 million to get it just so it could fly.
Wow, this might be a good time to ask. These planes are brought to us from the Collins Foundation, and Mr. Collins, I'm just assuming, is a very wealthy man, or at least is a good organizer to get the money in to restore these beautiful airplanes. What do you know about him?
Well, I know Mr. Collins very well. I work for him. Actually, it's not a true statement. Number one, it's not a job because we don't get paid. We're all volunteers. But I'm retired, and Mr. Collins believes in our American heritage. We have a total of 22 aircraft. These two aircraft are the ones that tour the most around the country, promoting our veterans and stuff, because, you know, we're losing thousands of them a day now. And
Our World War II veterans, yes, we are. I mean, World War II, 1940, so they're, yes, you're right, they're at the age where they're going to their heavenly destination without one of these beautiful planes. You're right. So we could almost call these an air museum, a real museum that's still flying. You know, I'm familiar with the Castle Air Force Base, which no longer exists, but they have kept that air museum, and I'm sure that many of these planes are at various locations like that, but they don't get up and fly.
no, there's very few of the airplanes. The B-24 behind us is the only flying example left in the world. There is another one that could be made airworthy, but there's only 9 airframes known to exist. Now the B-17, there's approximately a dozen of those that are considered airworthy, operated by various museums and associations and stuff like that. Ours flies the most because we do this 7 days a week for 10.5 months.
Now, what about the inevitable repairs and checking? I would think that would take a unique bunch of people with a plane this old to replace parts and all.
Well, we have 2 full-time mechanics that travel with us, and as you can see, we do maintenance and we do all of everything. You know, on the road itself, we replace engines, tires, you name it, and we do. Like when you say they're restored, well, they are, but we've never finished. You know, we're always adding historical stuff, so people will give us things. And, you know, Mr. Collins is such a believer in honoring our heritage, and he put a great deal of his own money out just to fly these around. And what keeps him in the air now is the people that do the walkthroughs and the flights like we're going to do tonight. That helps the airplanes pay for their own way so we can get it from one stop to the next.
Now, I understand, is this correct, this is the 10th year we've had both the B-17 and the B-24. Is this the 10th year, and are we going to anticipate every year these lovely World War II airplanes coming out every year?
Well, I certainly hope so.
Well, Mike, tell us something about this other plane over here. I don't know that our camera woman can get it. She came out yesterday and took some flight, so perhaps she'll just edit that in while we're talking in the background. Tell us about this plane over here.
Well, it's a B-17 Flying Fortress. It was kind of the backbone of the 8th Air Force over in Europe, bombing on the European continent. And it's the more famous of the 2, only because we call it the Hollywood airplane. It's the one that starred in all the movies, you know, with 12 O'Clock High and the War Lover and the Memphis Belle and stuff like that. It's more well known, even though the B-24, there was more of them produced and they flew more missions farther and faster. But the one everybody recognizes is the B-17. It's just a delightful airplane to fly. It's one of my favorites. And it, like I say, these 2 airplanes were one of the biggest reasons that we were able to score a victory in the battle for Europe. It was because we were able to destroy the enemy's method of making war. It was not so much we could beat them by numbers, but after a while there was many of their fighters were sitting on the ground while these bombers flew over because they didn't have the gas to come up and fight.
Well, I want to take this time as I close my time with you, Mike, to thank you and the volunteers from the Collins Foundation to bring these beautiful World War II planes out here. As many of you have known who've watched me on the air long enough, I did use my veterans benefits to get a degree, and one of them is in history. So I really appreciate being a veteran myself and coming from a long line of military people. The Collins Foundation has done a beautiful job in bringing these planes from place to place throughout America to remind us of our not really recent history.
Well, absolutely. We're honoring veterans from everything from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, even our people that are in Iraq now. You know, a lot of them have made the supreme sacrifice, and we need to thank them for that, and they need to be given their just due, that, you know, the sacrifices they've made.
Well, Mike, thanks for telling us about these planes. And now I'm going to try to find, and there are some lovely World War II veterans here who have personal memories. Thanks, Mike, for telling us all about the planes. Hi, we're so fortunate today to be at the Bremerton National Airport and looking at these beautiful old restored World War II airplanes. The B-17 is behind me, and the
24.
Okay, correct me. The B.
24.
Well, this is a man who should know, folks.
Tail gunner.
You were a.
Tail gunner on the B-24.
Okay, and I have two. I have Hollis here, and then I have. Give us your name.
Wayne Gilbert.
Wayne Gilbert. Okay, now we're going to start off by asking, where were you when Pearl Harbor happened?
I was in Oregon, near McMinnville, Oregon.
And what was the thoughts that went through your mind when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
Well, I heard it on the radio, and I couldn't believe it until I listened to the radio quite a while, and I was convinced that it was a real thing.
And did you march right down to the recruiter's office, or were you busy in school and couldn't do that at the time?
That took 2 weeks before I volunteered.
Well, amen for you. And what about you? Where were you when Pearl Harbor happened?
I was back in Maine. I worked in the woods back there. And I just decided that it's time to make a move and go to California and start in working on the B-24 bomber at Consolidated Aircraft in San Diego.
Oh, so you didn't necessarily join the military right away. You were going to build those airplanes.
I was married when I was 16. I had a family already before I was drafted.
Okay, I see. Okay, now tell us a little bit about your military background. What service did you join, and how did you find yourself on? You were on a B-29, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So when did you join?
I joined December 21st, 1941.
And what branch of the service?
It was the U.S. Air Corps then, or Army Air Corps, as they call it. And they call it the U.S. Air Force now.
Right.
And that's what I always call it. And I was shipped to McChord Air Force Base, or Air Base, in Tacoma, Washington.
Now, did you know immediately that you were going to be, did they call you flyboys back in those days?
Airedales or whatever.
And you knew up front that this is what was going to be your destiny.
Yes, I did.
And where did you end up flying?
Well, I went to Florida, and I took examination for Air Force Cadet and passed and waited a long time. And they finally said that my eye was too bad, that I couldn't qualify for a pilot.
So you were disappointed not to be a pilot, but still you managed to get on. Let's hear the rest of the story.
The rest of the story is I got into radio, maintenance and operation, and eventually ended up over on the island of Tinian, flying in B-29 bomb missions to Japan.
Okay, let's hold the rest of your history and get caught up with Hollis here. So you were in the Pacific.
In the Pacific.
Oh.
Mariana Islands.
Okay, now how you got drafted. When did this happen?
I worked at Consolidated Aircraft in San Diego for 2.5 years. And I changed jobs. I gave them 2 weeks' notice. I changed jobs and went into the shipyard right below, which is National City Concrete Ship. And then, about 6 months, I got greetings from the President of the United States. So I had to go to L.A., where I had signed up for the draft when I was going to school in California. And anyway, I was 1A. I was married and had one son and another one on the way. And I got enough tickets to get gas to go back to Maine, because my wife was having a second child, and there was nobody in California to take care of her. So I went back to Maine, and then it was over 30 days before I got noticed to report to Kennebunk, Maine, for the draft. And I went down there, and they made me take another physical because I had been over 30 days. I took a physical in Portland, Maine. And then from there, I went back. I got 21 days again to take care of my business. And sure enough, all this time, it took them to get the paperwork back and forth from LA to Maine. Why, pretty soon I got another notice. It was over 30 days. I got a notice to go to Camp Devens, Massachusetts. So I went to Camp Devens. Went to Kennebunk first, and then I went to Camp.
Now, where did you fly? Did you learn to fly? Did you get to be a pilot or a navigator? What was your role?
Tail gunner.
A tail gunner.
Tail gunner, and I flew the plane because the pilot and the crew. I was crewed up down in Tenderfield, Florida. In Biloxi, Mississippi, I took my basic training. I went to.
Well, we are talking about planes, and that was a plane that just flew over.
Went to Tenderfield, Florida, and that's where I started in flying. That's why I went with a B-24, and we were crewed up. There's 10 men in the crew.
Now, this is a picture of your crew here,
That's right.
I don't know if our camera lady can get a picture of his crew there, but he's got it on. Oh, I'm seeing the thumbs up. We've got a great shot of your crew. So, as a tail gunner, were you targeting the Japanese or the Nazis?
I was over in the South Pacific. We flew from Matherfield, California with a brand new B-24 we picked up at Salinas, California. And we flew from Matherfield to Hickam, Hawaii. 13 hours and 55 minutes it took. And then we stayed overnight. We got paid. That was the only time I got paid all the time I was overseas. And then we left the next day from Hickam Field and flew to Tarawa. And from Tarawa, that took pretty near 11 hours entirely. And then we flew from Tarawa to Biak, which is an island off New Guinea coast. And from there, we were there for about, I'd say 2 months.
Were you seeing a lot of action there? Were you seeing a lot of action there?
Not really. See, this was along in the last of it and everything. And this was brand new B-24, and we landed down there. And then we stayed there for about 2 months. It was the 90th Bomb Group, Jolly Rogers outfit. And we flew out of there and went to Morotai. And from Morotai, we went to the Philippines. And from the Philippines, we flew to Aishima, which is across from Okinawa.
You must have just flown all over the Pacific. Let's get back to our other Pacific War vet here. I haven't forgot you. Okay, so both my World War II veterans today were active in World War II, flying in the Pacific and doing their bit to win the war. So I'm not standing here, a tall, blonde person speaking Japanese. So let's pick up where you were at and what you were doing in the Pacific as a radio man and what action you saw.
Well, like him, I flew from Mather to Hawaii to Kwajalein and finally landed in Tinian and ready to take up our crew duties by taking bombing missions over Japan. Of course, in between we had lots of training. Originally I trained for a couple, 3 months in Texas. Then there was always radio operator training here and there. We had to keep proficient with our Morse code. That's the reason I wear a hearing aid now. Too much Morse code.
Too much Morse code. You need to get some veterans disability there, hon. We'll talk after the program. Now, were you ever, and I'm going to ask this of both of you, I'm assuming you were on a plane that the Japanese were trying to take you down. Were you ever hit, afraid for your life, thought, oh, Jesus have mercy, this is it?
Well, when we went over the target, I couldn't see it because I was in a little radio room, but I did have fears because they were shooting at us. But fortunately, they didn't hit us.
Amen.
Here I am.
Your mother must have known how to really pray for you. Huh? Now, what about you? I'm sure you had to have seen some action. Were there times you thought, wow,
Yeah.
Lord, save me here?
Well, you know, I put 350 hours entirely and over the South Pacific. And there are no gas stations out there or anything, so every day you went up, you kind of looked, see the tanks were full. But as I say, it was, hey, I came out of it without having to fire a shot in anger, but I was ready, able, and willing. And when we landed on Hiroshima and they dropped the atomic bomb from his B-29, why, it took 2 of them before they decided they wanted to give up. If they hadn't given up, we were there to bomb Japan in a submission. And we had that island of Hiroshima covered with B-24s, and they were all new, or relatively new. And we were there to bomb Japan in a submission if the atomic bombs hadn't worked. But they did, and I thank God. If they hadn't worked, I wouldn't be here being interviewed today.
I am sure people, none of us like the idea of nuclear weapons, but the fact is the bombing of Japan saved, hundreds of thousands of GIs' lives and
Japanese lives, too.
Yes.
Lots less Japanese today if we hadn't used that bomb.
Right.
A lot of people complain about it, but I'll tell you right now that was a godsend.
Well, my uncle was on the USS Pennsylvania, and he'd been on the USS Saratoga that had been hit by Japanese. And while he was a Navy man, he knew his life was saved, and the lives of all our military, despite whatever branch of service you were in, were saved by that. It's tragic that that's the way it had to be, but, you know, we were left no choice.
That's right, and this aircraft right behind here is a tremendous aircraft. It's a good one, a good solid aircraft. A lot of people complain about it, but I'll tell you right now, there's more of them built than any other bomber ever.
And is this the plane that's referred to as the Liberator?
That's right. That's the Liberator.
Now tell us a little, we don't have a B-29 here. Tell us a little bit about the B-29.
Well, it's much bigger than the B-17, and its pressure, when you fly high, your altitude remains the same. And the B-17 doesn't have a tunnel over the bomb bay, so you can go from the front to the back. And it had more sophisticated guns. You had a central fire control, waist gunners, and it had a tail gunner. Our tail gunner was the biggest man on the crew in the smallest gunnery position on the crew. And I remember one time he was shooting at what he thought was Jap Zeros, I think. And he stuttered when he got excited. And all we could hear over the interphone was just mush. So we didn't know what was really going on, but we knew the guns were going.
Well, praise the Lord, you're here to talk about it. Well, listen, you two, our radioman and our tail gunner, on behalf of the younger generation, I'm a 1953 baby, so thank you very much for, of course.
On the island where I was, Tinian, he was talking about the atomic bomb. The Enola Gay was on Tinian, right where we were.
But did you know, real quick, I'm sure the viewers are interested, did you know the crew on the Enola Gay?
No, I didn't. It was too secretive.
Hush, hush.
To even look at it when we went by.
I see.
But we knew they were there because they were different B-29s. They were only had a tail gun on them, and the crews were kept separate quarters. It was very secretive.
Yes, I would imagine so. Well, again, this is PJ Scott, and we're at the Bremerton National Airport live. You've heard all the planes here, folks. I don't control the environment here. And I want to thank our tail gunner.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
And I want to thank our radio man.
Well, thank you very much. I was honored to be here.
And remember to thank veterans when you meet them. Our World War II veterans, our Korean War veterans. I'm an old Navy way from the Vietnam era. Thank our veterans from Gulf War and those that are coming home now. We've all taken our turn serving our country. Some of us were warriors. Thank them and pray for them. And remember, pray for our active duty military personnel and pray for comfort for those families that have lost loved ones. This is PJ Scott with Veterans Forum. God bless you. See you next month.